It is 6:32. I'm calling to order the regular meeting of the Committee on Ordinance. The members present are myself, Chair Rebecca Lisi, Councilor at Large. We have the Vice Chair, Juan Anderson Burgos from Ward 6. We're also joined by Terry Murphy, Ward 2, Libby Hernandez, Ward 4 City Councilor, and Linda Vacan, Ward 5 City Councilor. So just as a point of information, this was originally a very long traffic ordinance agenda. And then when we passed it over to Bob for reports and update, a lot of the items were either already disposed of by this committee, but never had a final vote, or some things in sort of like the handoff between the two different administrative assistants never got over to DPW, so they never had a heads up to work on some of them in advance. And so we just cleaned up the jacket essentially, and now I think that we're on solid footing moving forward into the next year. So it is a brief agenda. I did pull up to the end of the agenda and order filed by councilors Bartley and Vacan related to some of the grant issues that we've been talking in committees of recently. So hopefully Tanya will be able to join us by then. And I see a phone number, so maybe that is Tanya for the later's discussion. Is that Tanya at 297?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So
yes, that's me.
Thanks. Jeffrey, will you change the phone number to Tanya's name for us? Okay, so let's start at the top of the agenda and see if we could get through these few things here. So I'll entertain a motion.
Chair Lisi, since it was a late addition, would it be possible to take up item 4 out of order, since Tanya was good enough to provide us with some information and come in?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Motion has been made and seconded to suspend the necessary rules and take up item number 4 out of order. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Great. So Tanya, I think you've heard in council chambers recently, you know, a desire to do some more work to track and understand how to ensure that the grants that we're bringing in are not going to be counted against our free cash in the future. I'll read this item into the record. So filed by Bartley and Vacan, ordered that the mayor, the auditor, and the city's financial team, as needed, provide draft internal controls on how city grants are to be administered so that future governments are not faced with paying administrative shortfalls. Since one of the makers is here, Councilor Vacan, do you want to speak to this order in any other detail, or do you want to just pass it over to Tanya at this point?
Well, I would just comment that I think this was a very good order filed by Councilor Bartley, and particularly in light of the issues that we had a year ago that unfortunately we've had to address at almost the same level again this year, to the points made by Chairman of Finance, Councilor McGivern. I think this is the nuts and bolts of preventing continued problems in this regard. So that's why I was happy to co-sponsor this with Councilor Bartley. But aside of that, I would prefer to let Tanya walk through her documents, which on a fairly quick look, I found to be quite complete and on point, and I think would get us where we need to go. Thank you.
Tanya, you're
okay.
Welcome to speak. Yep.
Okay, thank you. So what I did actually is I created a document for a grant management procedure. I did send it out to everybody this morning. I don't know if people had a chance to read it. What it covers is, you know, how to file your order for a grant. Once your grant is approved, what happens then? We create a fund. It goes through the reconciliation process. Mm-hmm. It talks about grant revenues and reimbursements. As far as the deficit, it also speaks on flagging the deficit funds and what happens if your fund is flagged. And I'm going to add another reporting piece to go with your ordinance. And I'm going to create a form for people so that everyone's aware of the information that they're responsible for. So I'm hoping that by creating a form to go with this procedure, it'll make it easy for people to fill out the information you're looking for. And it'll all be consistent. And then we can go ahead and submit that to the city clerk's office.
Great. So does anyone on the committee have questions for Tanya at this point? My question, Tanya, is what I hear you saying is that you would be creating, number one, a form, right? Two is this ordinance, this language that you created here would be turned into an ordinance that outlines the procedure for obtaining and recording grants.
There's actually an ordinance in place that I think I can place onto the form, and just the form is more to create a consistent reporting process. So it will have, you know, it will have the grant name, how much money it is, the dates, what the purpose of the grant was for. And I know that Councilor Bartley had sent, you know, me some information that he would be interested in seeing. So I incorporated that as well into the form. So that will accompany this procedure, and it will be like a part of the procedure for them to do at the end.
Okay, and then finally, the other thing that I hear you saying is that this tracking, if you will, would be kept in the clerk's office as opposed to your office?
I mean, either one could do it. It sounds to me from the ordinance that it goes to the city clerk's office, but I mean, I can always request a copy as well. You know, I don't know if that's something that, I don't know if that's something that you guys would take care of on your end, or something that I would gather together. It would go through the clerk's office in the end to go onto the agenda. So that's what the ordinance says.
I see. So then, so the clerk's office, so the form is going to be kept in the clerk's office and then submitted back to the clerk's office, and that's how it becomes a formal communication on our agenda. But I think in some ways we should be able to send it to, like, when we receive these communications, we should send it over to your office, because I think at the end of the day, when you
I'm going to get a copy of it.
You're going to get a copy.
I would get a copy either way.
Yeah, because I think what we want to make sure is that at like when whatever date it is that you have to start, you know, closing out the books, you'd be able to notify everybody that has sort of an active grant and say, here's your 60-day notice to close out your grants, or here's your, you know, 30-day notice as a reminder. So
in this, it asks them when they submit it to the auditor's office to begin with. What I am asking for is a beginning date and an end date. Then I can put that end date into Munis, and I can pull a report out every month and see what grants are ending. So I'll start doing that as well. So then I can say to them, it's closing, it's time for you to start your report. You have whatever.
And then do you think that a month is enough time to close out the reports on these grants?
I think it depends on how much money the grant is, how much work is involved, what kind of a project it is. So, I mean, obviously, if you're spending $300,000 a month versus one that you're spending $5,000 a month, obviously, if you're only spending $5,000, it's a $15,000 grant. That should be fairly easy. If it's a lot, then there's a lot to report on, though, you know. If you want to know the people that are working for the grant and that kind of thing.
So it seems that, you know, the report might have to be tiered in some way. So if there's larger ones, we would want more than a 30-day notice.
I think it says 60 days on the ordinance, but I mean, yeah, we could definitely give that. We could do that as well, and that would be up to you. I'm just going to go by the ordinance.
Chair
Is
Lisi?
that okay?
Yeah. Counselor Bacon.
Thank you. So my understanding of this is that this is a procedural matter to back up the ordinance. And while our auditor will now have the tools that she was seeking previously to be able to freeze the accounts for people who are actually managing the grants, it's really up to them to be tracking what they're dispersing out of the grants on a monthly basis. It's not really the auditor's responsibility to tell full-time people that are managing grants how to do that. This is just being set up to prevent the problems that we've had because things were not being tightly managed. So while I think it's great if the auditor can give them a flag that a deadline is coming up, it's not really the auditor's responsibility to be tracking their grants for them because they have a position that is dedicated to doing that. So I see it as sort of a teamwork approach to help tag team on making sure that deadlines are met and things are being tracked adequately. But it's really up to the grant manager to know when they got the grant, how much it's for, etc. And when Tanya provides them with these forms, they could use it as a tie out form at the end of the year. They could also use it month to month if they so choose. But her role will be to flag it so that they can't spend money out of it if the money is depleted or there's another accounting issue with the grant, as I understand it. And Tanya, jump in if I'm misunderstanding anything, but that's how I see this, as a procedure backing up the ordinance.
Yes, absolutely. And not just to back up your ordinance, but also to give people information and tell them what their responsibilities are. You're
Right.
outlining it. I'm going to have them initial it. I need for them, you can't hold people responsible for things that they don't necessarily know.
Right.
And I also gave them some guides, like, here's how to create a year-to-date report. Here's how to do an account inquiry. Like, I want to make sure they know that they have resources in the Munis system as well to help them be successful. So yes, I agree with what you're saying.
Thank you.
Any other comments from other committee members before I start speaking again? Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So Tanya, first of all, thank you I just got a chance to skim it. I didn't get the chance to do all the other things with Munis and all the other things you were talking about.
I'm sorry. I think Joe had his hand up and I wasn't sure if you missed him.
I probably did because I don't have that other blue window open. So
Gotcha.
I'll come back to you, Joe. I apologize. Deference to the committee member.
Joe, you never give deference to me over Joe. I mean, he'll never forgive you, but he's doing it this time. So Tanya, first I want to thank you for your efforts. And as I look at this, I mean, you are trying to create what I would call a path from step one all the way to, let's say there's 10 steps going through this process. You're trying to give everybody a very clear, at this step, this is what you're doing. At this step, this is what you're doing until the end. And then you close out the account and you give a report on what the grant did and how successful it was. So, I mean, I definitely think that is a plus, and it's certainly something that every grant manager should get and probably meet with you right in the beginning. Obviously, for a while, it's going to keep you busy because you're going to be sitting down with people to start with. But once that happens, my gut is they would just follow step one, step two, step three, step four, and go right down the line. And my other thing, I'm not quite sure if we need to make this an ordinance or just an administrative procedure.
Right.
Where we know that if you get a grant, you work with our auditor and she designs the steps for you to take. and you process those. And I would suggest maybe, Tanya, and you, if this is too much, you just let me know, but that maybe halfway through the grant, there would be a 15-minute sit down with them. How's things going? Where are you at? Are you having any issues? What are the issues? And if you can help clear them up, or if they need to go somewhere to clear them up, we're getting them done as we're moving through the path, not at the end. Because if you're trying to do it all, then go ahead.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. Go ahead and say what you're going to say.
So this is asking them to do that on a monthly basis. It's asking, it's saying to you, you need to reconcile every month. These are the things that you need to reconcile. This is what you should be looking for. If you have an issue, please contact me.
Okay, yeah, so, I'm fine with them doing, but I'm just thinking for you, I would just say halfway through the grant, there's going to be a mid grant review audit, and then
don't forget, I'm going to be flagging
them resolved.
Yep. Okay. I'm going to be flagging them, so I'm going to monitor these every month, because what I need to see is that if they're in deficit, that deficit is declining, coming back and declining. They're reimbursable. Yep. So I'm going to continuously put the flags on and take them off depending on what the situation is. So I'm going to keep on top of that until things are working properly. I mean, I'll still keep on top of it, but I think in the long run, it will not be as much work because people will be on track and they'll be doing their monthly reconciliation. I would hope.
I agree. Once you get all this lined up, people are going to recognize, first of all, these are the steps I got to take. If I'm going to do this, if I'm going to continue to do this, these are the things I need to do. But I thank you for your efforts. I know this has been an issue that has been causing some grief in the city. So I'm glad to see you're working to resolve it and make sure we don't have this problem in the near future. And I would now defer to the distinguished at-large counselor, almost as old as me.
Juan, he must be talking about you.
I know he's not talking about me.
I still look.
One thing I know for sure, Councilor Murphy, is I will never be as old as you. Thank you.
There's a few other things, Joe, but I won't take you there.
Shots fired.
Thank you, everyone. Tanya, I agree that, you know, the map here, the tools here, you know, the effort here is what we need from your office. And I don't want to, I want to say a lot more, but I just want to commend you on this. I just want something real quick and then try to take this one more step, because I think putting some language in the ordinance that exists is important, and I agree with this order and the efforts. But let me just read. In accordance with Mass General Laws, Section 44, Section 53A, the City Council hereby accepts some provisions. Does anybody recognize that language? It's the opening line of every grant we accept. Mass General Laws, Section 44, Mass Municipal Finance. We are governed by Mass Municipal Finance. Everything we do, our budget, the mayor submits, the way we have control over the budget, the appropriations that we can, and some of it is charter, but the charter is just a connection with Mass General Law itself. The ordinance is great, but we have to go a lot further than tweaking our ordinance. And that's why I'm disappointed that the finance managers outside of our auditor are not with us this evening. And the department heads are the ones that need to get the message. I agree with everything that's been said tonight, except the part about the city clerk. City clerk has nothing to do with this. There's no need. We have hundreds of grants, when you include the school department, that come in every year. We don't need to bog down the city clerk's office with every time a department head or a grant manager, you know, wants to make a monthly report. The managers need to look at that. The auditor can flag it, but number one, the chief financial officer, who appoints most of the department heads, who get and receive and are responsible for these grants needs to be responsible for what's going on with the managers of these grants. If that doesn't happen, we can write all the ordinances we want, but we cannot manage because we are a legislative body. We can point towards issues, we can talk about deficits, we can do a lot of things. But if these people are not on board, we cannot manage them. So it would be nice if we heard from the mayor, who I know said to Tanya, this is great, go for it. Mr. Mayor, what are you going to do when something is flagged? What is your office going to do as the chief financial officer? When we know Sergeant Hart works on all the grants in the police department. Chief, what are you going to do when Tanya flags something to make sure that your grant manager is doing the right thing? We know the city engineer has questioned, or I think everybody's seen the emails, you know, why some grants that DPW had were flagged by Melanson and Heath, and then the Department of Local Services decided to use or to wipe out free cash because of what Melanson and Heath was saying. Why is it the superintendent? Why aren't we getting the managers to say, how come something that was posted in July, just because it was 14 days after July 30th, is wiping out free cash dollars? This is the problem. This has been, and it's not just the last 2 years, it's just coming to a head now because our Division of Local Services is taking hard tactics to do something that should have been done years ago. Things that we never even saw as a city council on a regular basis. We saw bulletins from DLS and we heard of things when we reconciled the budget before we did the tax classification and allowed the final tax rate to be set. But this is the ordinance language is great, but we're missing management of these grants. And I left one department out because it's the scariest one of all, the school department. And I said something, the school department is the biggest abuser at one meeting. I may have worded that wrong. I didn't mean abuser by no means. But school department gets grants that this body doesn't vote on. We have never voted to accept any grant the school department accepts. There are multiple large grants that the school department gets. I understand that prior to receivership, the school committee did it their way. I'm guessing they voted to accept the grant. I'm guessing they took some control over the management of said grant. I don't know. The school committee has no authority to do that now. Under receivership, they don't vote. You know, they're working with the receivers, they're working with the staff, but they don't vote on it. Therefore, how is it that deficits within a receivership budget, which to me means the state controls that budget, and the state is telling us it's in deficit, how come the state is not stepping in and looking at the receiver and saying, hey, you got a problem here? That's management. We can't tell the receiver what to do. The mayor can't tell the receiver what to do. The state's got problems in their own budget, the school budget, and yet DLS is not doing anything. They're telling us we need to create a new three-figure position called a chief financial officer to oversee the auditor, the tax collector, the assessors, combine the treasurer with the tax collector, all that stuff, which is all good and fine. Who appoints that officer? The mayor. Who's the manager? The mayor is going to be the manager whether the mayor does the work or not. So let's recreate the language in the ordinance and show our part as fiscal watchdogs, but don't fool yourselves. This is just a baby step to the big problem. And we need to get the managers and we need to find out why. A year ago, I was mad. I'm no longer mad. You know, it's getting to a point where I'm just going to stop voting for grants if the managers don't step up to the plate and do their jobs. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Counselor Greenie, and then I see Counselor Bacon's hand. Counselor Greenie.
Yes, as the youngest of the two aforementioned gentlemen, I just want to say that
Juan, you
this
started
procedure, this procedure is really a good procedure for efficiency in the city. And if we don't create an ordinance, we could at least go on record as supporting the procedure. I think that, but I think that this is excellent, and I think that the auditor has some really good ideas here. So somehow I think that the council should support what she's saying.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Bacon?
Thank you. Based on that, on the recent comments, I would like to add an amendment to the procedure, or if when Tanya is working on the reporting aspect, that Tanya could give us at least a listing of the grants that are flagged if they remain flagged for more than 2 months. So then we would at least have the ability to go back to the mayor or the receiver relative to this matter. I thank Councilor McGivern for really fleshing out the point that I was trying to make by saying that we cannot make our auditor responsible for the management of all the grants, because she is responsible for the accounting for the city. And to Councilor McGivern's well-made point, it is a management issue. My concern is, while I'm a fan of reorganizing things and streamlining things, I've never found that adding to the bureaucracy has made it more efficient. So I think that's a debate for another day, but I think this would at least give us information similar to what we're now getting on transfers in the budget that will go a long way to helping to cure this problem. So I support it. And the only thing with Tanya's review and recommendation, if it would be helpful for her to report out to us, I don't know, is a quarterly report reasonable, or anything over X amount of dollars in deficit? Tanya, I would leave it to you to kind of set the parameters at which point the council should be aware, so that we can at least communicate through the mayor to the managers and the receiver. Thank you.
I was thinking, oh, I'm sorry, can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead, Tanya.
I was thinking that I would send you a grant report when I send the regular budget reports.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I put them, I've been labeling them by department just to make it a little bit easier. So I should be able to pull that report by department and with balances. And that would be an easy report to put in there.
That would be great.
That would be very good.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Great. So thanks so much. I just want to really clarify. I think I'm going to echo some of the comments that Councilor McGivern made, that I don't think we need the clerk's office involved. I think that from the beginning, I always have thought of the folks that get the grants as the grant managers, but we need somebody keeping track of how many grants we're pulling into the city. And if the city council is voting on the grants, in some ways that is doing the same thing in terms of a formal communication that the clerk's office would have been doing in sort of the previous outline that was presented. So if we have to approve the grants, there is some record of them coming into council chambers. And I think we need to send a copy to the auditor as well as the department head. And I think that's where the controls come in, whether it's freezing accounts or, talking to the department heads about what the plan is for getting the disbursements or reimbursements, whichever way the grant is structured. Those are the two sort of avenues that I'm going to call it grant accounting as opposed to grant management. So like the grants are being administered and administered by the folks that procure them. But we do need a centralized sort of accounting of where they are and how they're affecting our budget. And that to me is very much a function of our auditor's office. Because at the end of the year, or whenever the cycle is, the auditor is the one that's going to be, responsible for closing out all of these accounts. And so we've all heard throughout this discussion, if we could do this in a more regular basis and have, these check-ins and flags happening, it will make it easier for our auditor to close out these accounts.
Definitely.
Go ahead, Tanya.
No, I was just going to say I'm definitely tracking them in that way. So I pull out a report once a month to look at the activity, but the control wasn't there to flag them to question, so to speak. So I already do that, I guess is what I want to say. This is just giving it a more, I think what the ordinance says is that it has to be submitted to the city clerk, like as a communication. Am I wrong about that?
The final report?
Sure, I'd have to see. I mean, that may be the filing of the order. I'm not sure if there's anything else that would have to happen there. Crystal, can we have a motion to suspend the necessary rules and ask Crystal to weigh in on this?
Can I just ask a question before you do that?
Sure, Councilor Murphy.
I mean, is it not, my understanding is that at the end of a grant, there needs to be a report to the city council.
Right.
And I'm assuming that's what goes to the city clerk to get it on our agenda.
Yes.
It's not that the city clerk is administering the grant. It's more that she's providing the documentation from the grant manager as to what happened with that grant, not in terms of finances, but what happened in terms of results. At least that's what my understanding is.
Mm-hmm.
But that, if I may, that to me is not, it's not really, I mean, it's just filing an order. It's filing a communication. It's not asking the clerk to be a part of the process in any way other than it is the means by which we get things onto our agendas.
Right.
Yeah, but that is where the clerk is in the process. I don't think the clerk is doing anything else. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think they're doing anything else.
The way that I understood the earlier part of the conversation is that there was going to be an increased role for the clerk, and I don't think that is.
I didn't see that. I could be wrong.
I didn't hear it.
So okay, so then the other thing that I want to raise is that we have this ordinance that says we should be updated when these grants are closed out. We should get a report for how much money was spent and what the deliverables were and how everything sort of turned out. What were the results? But again, we all sort of just let the grant managers in the various departments take on that responsibility, and it's not clear whether or not we're getting those reports when these grants wrap up. No, right? We accept the grants and then they sort of like disappear. They live in the individual departments with the grant managers, and they bring in the money and they create the projects that we want to do. But there's nothing that flags for us that we should be expecting this report. We should be expecting, and I think that's the function that I want to make sure that we have one place, and it sounds like the auditor's office is already doing this, but I'm getting a little bit stuck on to, why these accounts are like open at the end of the year then, if we do have a sense of when they begin, when they end, when they have to sort of be reconciled, and then we need, again, notification that these grants are coming due, and we should be expecting on next month's agenda a report from this department on that grant, this department on that grant. And it seems like there is a way to get that report printed out at least on a monthly basis. So in addition to what balances are associated with individual grants in each department, we should be getting a sense of which ones are coming or which ones are going to be closed out shortly.
Madam Chair?
Councilor Greenie and then Councilor Burgos, Anderson Burgos.
Just quickly, if the auditor flags, the council doesn't want to be micromanaging these grants. If the auditor flags something in the grant, then she could give a report to the council and we could take a look at it. But we don't want to be micromanaging all these grants from all these different departments. If the auditor finds a problem or a flag, she notifies the council and we deal with it. And I think that's probably the most efficient way to do it. Thank you.
Right. I don't think anybody is saying anything to the contrary there.
Then it's a lot less complicated than we're trying to make it.
Councilor Anderson Burgos,
Yeah, so
you're on mute now.
no, I just wanted to lower down the hand so I don't forget. So let's look at why this is in front of us, right? So this is in front of us is because we're having issues with the grants and the I don't know, the nonprofit or whoever is giving us the grant, and then the city ends up paying because something in the documentation. So when a grant is offered, if the one managing that grant, let's just say, for example, you're supposed to use A for this, B for that, and C for this of this part of the grant. If you change anything in that formula, then you sort of break the contract with the whoever's offering the grant, and so therefore the grant is not paid. That's what we need to look at. Is actually the person who's actually managing the grant, because if they're mismanaging it, the city ends up paying for that grant. I think that's why we're here today, because we're having issues with grant and where the money and the city paying for it, and that's, I believe that's why it's in front of us, right? Because nothing else makes sense to me.
Well, it's just, the nature of some grants are you get, lump sums in quarters or, bi-monthly, and they're often reimbursed, so you don't get a grant and all of a sudden have like $300,000 at your foot. It's like you get a grant, you spend down what your, plan says that you're going to spend down in whatever many months you're going to, and then you submit your records, and then you get the reimbursement. That's how most grants work. So in the meantime,
I'm sorry, so right, but if the person managing that grant doesn't follow through on what they're supposed to, how they're supposed to manage that grant, they're not going to pay for that grant. We're not going to get that money, and then the city ends up paying for that. That's where the issue lies, is how they're the case manager, the person managing the grant is who we have to look at, because if they're not being watched and they mess up, we pay for that. And that's why I have issues accepting a grant, is because the city ends up paying for it and it hurts us in the long run. And I get why the grant is good, but this actually hurts the city in the long run if it's not followed through. We have to look at the details of that grant and make sure that the case manager is following through. And I know that's micromanagement, but where do we go from here?
So if I see you, Councilor Leahy. I just want to finish the point that I was making before. Councilor Anderson Burgos was making this point here. It's just that it's not so much the grant management as the submitting of the receipts and getting the reconciliation. And I think that we've had a high level of turnover in the city overall. And so I know for at least a handful of the grants that have been on our list, some of them were because of turnover or insufficient staffing in the office that have led to the person who was sort of managing the grant and knew all the timelines leaving, or somebody else taking it on and just not staying on top of the timelines. That's the thing that we need centralized control over, and it's not the city council. I really think it's the auditor's office. So that, let's say, I don't know, the Parks Department gets a grant. I'm making this up. Parks Department gets a grant, but somebody in that department leaves. The person who is managing that grant may not have passed off enough information to anyone else in that office to know that these receipts and reconciliations need to be managed in whatever timeline was agreed upon in the grant. And so that's why the monthly reports from the auditor's office, I think, are helpful for both the department head and the city council. And that's when we get to know, like, whether or not, you know, these grants are coming to a close. That's going to flag for us when the reports are due. And then on the other hand, if a copy was going monthly to the department head, then you're holding the department head sort of accountable for whatever is happening in terms of the grant management. So if if they're one person in their department got a grant and now they're not there, or they're on vacation, or whatever's going on, we don't have to micromanage it, but the department head needs to know that this is coming up, who's responsible for it, and then that gives them the control over the in their department, and making sure that it's being all the timelines and requirements are being met. Does that make sense to folks? So on that note, I'll ask Councillor Leahy for his comment, and then Councillor Bacon, I see you're in queue as well.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Sorry I got to this meeting a little bit late, but this is, listening to both Councillor Burgos, Anderson Burgos, and Councillor Lisi, you're both right. Just not too long ago, we realized that somebody was out of work because of personal issues, which is obviously understandable. However, grants weren't getting taken care of, and so as Juan was saying, the City of Holyoke is on. We're responsible for paying that if we don't get the grants, and there's a substantial list of grants that the City of Holyoke had to pay for because one or multiple reasons we didn't complete the grant. I filed an order some time ago, and Councillor Bartley was good enough to sign on with me regarding accountability to whoever is getting the grants. And it's certainly not to micromanage, but it's so what we do as board of directors to this major organization, we know what's going on. We have updated information, if any of our constituents. Not only that, but it helps us make better decisions in the future, whether we want to accept a grant, as Juan said. And to Councillor Lisi's point, we need some sort of accountability. And I think that our departments are doing a good job of it. But, the private sector, and I worked there for many years, if I was gone tomorrow, somebody would know the information and be able to move forward starting tomorrow evening. There wouldn't be any downtime. And we have to make sure that if a person's out, that other people are taking up, in this case, the position with grants. We can't afford to pay for grants that we as city councilors accept. And we think that, this is a great thing. Down the road, we find that we didn't get the grant for one reason or another, and the city is now responsible for it. And so that is one of the reasons, if not other, I have other reasons, but having the information after the grant is done is certainly not making anybody do any harder work, because a lot of times they have to submit submittals or summary pages or benchmarks and data. So they have the information already, but we should be getting copies of it. That's what I think, but I thank you.
Right, and that's what the Bartley order that we always talk about does. It says, when this wraps up, and you file.
If I could, Councillor Lisi, that was the Leahy order that Councillor Bartley filed on with me.
Okay, so it's the Leahy-Bartley order. So there's that order that says we should get that update. Like you said, there's a summary that they're doing anyway. Let's get a copy over to the city council. But we don't know. There's nothing that's keeping track of what is coming due, and that we should be expecting those summaries for. Like there's nothing out there that is keeping some sort of centralized system of who's got what, where, and when. That's the piece that I think we need. Councillor Bacon.
Thank you. And so that brings us to the Bartley-Bacon order. So this is a step so that the accounts will be flagged. So the council will become aware on an ongoing basis as to which departments are and are not in compliance with the grants that they are managing. And at that point, we will have information when grants come before us that will help us in making a decision as to whether we should accept them or not. And to Councilor Anderson Burgos' point earlier and made by others also, the management issue of who picks up that work when somebody leaves the department is up to the head of the department. That's why they're getting the big bucks. So this is just helping us to have information to make the decisions that we do make. And it's the first time our auditor has had authorization to have the control to flag the accounts and therefore control disbursements out of them. So we've finally got the accountability piece on the money flow, and we will need to prevail upon leadership to keep accountability in the day-to-day operational management of these grants. But that's a department by department matter. So we're working on one part of the equation, which I think will go a long ways to making the problem that we've had these last 2 years, which is so large, much, much more controlled going forward. Thank you. So I hope that this committee supports the addition of this procedure, either as an attachment to the ordinance as to how the ordinance will be complied with, or in some fashion so that it does have some teeth beyond being a piece of paper. And then if the auditor, for some reason, which I hope doesn't happen, moves on, that becomes another piece of paper in a drawer that doesn't happen. So I would like to see it formalized enough that it would carry forward whatever we do with it. But I think it's very good and we can always tweak it down the road, but I'd like us to really get going as soon as possible in operationalizing this. Thank you.
Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. I just agree. I think department heads, if you have a grant that someone in your department is administering, part of your job as the manager of that department is to know how that grant is going and what kind of assistance they might need, so that there is, you are the connection to, if someone got sick or someone had to leave, onto how to continue that grant and what is necessary to make sure that you're doing it right. I mean, that's just to me, that's just standard good quality management. You're not just allowing everything to go. It's not that you're micromanaging your department, but it's knowing what's going on in your department and knowing when you need to step in or potentially have to find some other way to do it. And I think that a grant manager in any department should be reporting to the department as to, we got this grant, we're trying to do this, and this is what we've been able to do, and this is how much we spent so far, and this is what we've got left. We're ahead of time, we're behind, whatever the case might be, so that that department manager is aware of that right at the beginning. And again, I just think formalizing this, I have no problem with formalizing this. I think it sets a good procedure, and I do think, as long as people are held accountable, that this will work and improve the process so that we're not getting burnt as we go into the future. So I thank Tanya for what she's done. I think it seems like a pretty straightforward document, and she really lays it out for people. So I would just suggest that if we want to put it part of an ordinance, I'm fine with that, but I definitely think it should be part of a formalized accepted procedure in order to receive a grant.
Right. I think that we should have legal language of some sort that just says, like, we ordain, that, anyone obtaining the grant in the city follows the grant management procedure as outlined by the auditor. And then the auditor can always amend or adjust the grants management procedure, but at least it's ordained that anyone in the city is going to follow that procedure, whatever it is. It may change over, time to time, but that they follow this procedure. Councilor Hernandez.
Yes, hi, thank you. I just wanted to add, so with this implementation, what it's going to mean is that whatever grant is coming into the city that we will be accepting has to sign off on these like rules per se that are going to be implemented now and meet those benchmarks throughout the grant in order for us to accept it? And how was it that it was done before?
So I'll take it, and then Tanya, if you want to add anything to what I'm adding here. So at the end of the day, not much is changing.
Okay.
It's just creating a formal process of initial reporting. So nothing would have to happen for the city council to approve things. Like the same process for approving grants would be in place. However, if we find that after some time, some departments have problems keeping up with this grant management procedure, and they're falling into default consistently, then we would be informed, and we would be able to say, no, we're not going to pass or approve another grant for your department because you have shown that you are not a good manager of grants. But it wouldn't change the process of accepting grants at all. It would just say to anyone who's going to take on a grant that they have to fill out a form. The form is going to the auditor's office. It'll help create the information. The form will have the information that the auditor needs in order to create a spreadsheet of all the grants and all the different departments and when they're due, and get them into the Munis system. And then from there, the auditor would have the ability to print out monthly reports to understand who's up to date on their grants, who's in default, and then the city council would get a copy of that, and we could always forward it to the department head if we find that there are multiple defaults in a row.
Madam
Great.
Chair?
Thank you.
Yeah. Before I recognize you, Councilor Greenie, I just want to see if Tanya felt like that was a good summary or if I left out anything in particular.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't unmute. That's fine. What you said is fine.
Yeah, well, it captured it pretty well.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Councilor Greenie.
Yeah, we just want to make sure also that we don't impede any department head or anybody in the city from applying for these grants. We want to make sure that the language, whichever way it's formalized, it's not going to discourage anybody from applying for any of these grants. Thank you.
Right.
So I'd entertain a motion to ask legal to draft some language that says that anyone that applies and is awarded a grant in the city must follow the grant management procedure as outlined by the auditor's office.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded.
Could I ask a question?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead.
No, I didn't have my hand. Yeah, I'm just asking if I could ask a question.
Absolutely.
And this is just, and so if we create this ordinance or the Leahy-Bartley ordinance in terms of reports.
The Leahy-Bartley ordinance is already passed.
Yeah, no, I know that. But let's say somebody doesn't do it. Then what's the penalty?
I think the penalty from this conversation, the way I understand it, is that we get to say no to future grants because they're not following the rules.
Okay, but we could say that without an ordinance. if we found, I mean, I'm just, that's why I'm looking at this as more a procedural thing than an ordinance thing, because I mean, again, if I have an ordinance, there's a penalty. And if the penalty is you're not going to get any more grants, if you do all of these things, but you end up being flagged and you get out of that, next year you got more flags. I'm not going to say to the third year, you had a problem the first year, you solved it. You got a problem the second year, I'm not feeling comfortable to give you a third year. So that is a penalty, but it's really not a penalty to that person who's administering the grant. I would prefer it, and I'll go along with the ordinance, but I prefer it as a procedure that is accepted. And when it's not accepted, that pretty much tells you that's not the person you want handling those grants.
Yeah, I think we are leaving it as a procedure. We're just highlighting in the ordinance that there is a procedure that you need to follow. So we're not ordaining the procedure itself. We're just saying, heads up, there's a procedure that you need to follow according to the ordinance.
Okay. Okay.
I see Councilor McGivern and then Councilor Hernandez.
I mean, penalty is a strong word, Councilor Murphy, but you're on target. What I said earlier, we can write all the language and policy we want. We're not managers. We can't enforce it. And if the managers aren't on board, we're just going to have the real penalty when the Division of Local Services at the end of the fiscal year says you have these deficits because your people don't know what they're doing, and we don't have free cash because they won't certify free cash because of the deficits. Am I right, Tanya?
Yes, you're right.
So I think it's good to write the language. You're asking to ordain it, but it's maybe you can call it a law or a policy, but we're not the enforcing body here. And the mayor is supposed to be here by this order. I'm disappointed that no one to represent the mayor is here. None of the finance team is here. The department heads are the ones that are the managers. We need to find out why, they're questioning DLS as much as we are, or as much as I am anyways. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I think this language is good. It's a great idea, but we got to go a lot further than this as a city to stop this debacle of not being able to get free cash because of all this inconsistencies and the deficits of grant monies. And it's, Congressman Anderson Burgos is right. It's the way something's posted. I got an email from Bob Parent that, on Grant X, they submitted the invoice in the middle of June. They got the reimbursement in the middle of July. Melanson and he said, that's a deficit. Uh-oh, no. I don't get it. We got deficits in accounts in the schools for class of 1947 scholarship fund because some principal mismanaged it. Why are taxpayers paying for the class of 1947, good-hearted, generous, trying to help out someone in 2021 get a scholarship, some student to college, and because it's not managed right, we have a deficit. Where are the managers? They're the ones that have to be not punished, but they have to be made to understand it's their responsibility. And the people that appoint the managers have got to be here and doing their responsibility. Thanks.
Councilor Hernandez.
Thank you. I just was gonna kind of like develop a little bit more on that. So if we're not the body of enforcement, but we're gonna be overseeing that it gets implemented, then if someone is not doing well with what they said they were going to do, isn't that supposed to, doesn't that turn like into a personnel issue? Like someone needs to manage and then enforce that? Because I know that Councilor Murphy mentioned penalty. It almost sounds like there has to be like an enforcement of some type of personnel issue at that point, and to have a disciplinary action to see what is it that's going on. So maybe that's not what's happening, is what I'm understanding by this.
It could be something that, it could be another piece of the ordinance, that there is a formal, like a write-up and a process for disciplinary action, like a write-up for like a first warning and then a second warning. And I mean, it could be managed that way, but I think that would go to Councilor McGivern's point about having the managers here and having them speak to how they would want to enforce and implement the policy in their departments. I will, for the record, say the way that I understood this order, it seemed like we only needed Tanya here. And so I asked Jeffrey, our administrative assistant, to only invite Tanya I did not ask him to invite anyone else from the financial team or the mayor's office or the department heads. Again, the way that I understood this order, it seemed that having Tanya here would be sufficient to crafting something and drafting and getting it done. But I do understand the value of having department heads here to see if there's more that we could be doing to monitor and force compliance.
Can I make a motion?
I think my hand is
I'm
up.
sorry. Go ahead.
Councilor Bacon. And then
Thank you.
Councilor Murphy, is that your hand up again or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes. So the intent of the order was to try to get an overall understanding from a managerial and a fiscal perspective relative to this management of grants. And it would have been helpful to have representation from the mayor's office, as we've been saying for a long time, on a number of issues. But secondarily to the points being made, we cannot do day-to-day management of departments. That's the purview of the mayor. But what we can do, which is a different matter, is we can write ordinances relative to finance and funding along perhaps such lines, which would be a different order, which would say that if there are deficits in grants that are not cured by a department within X amount of time, then the cure will take place by that amount of money being reduced from their budget in the subsequent budget year. So the council can do some fiduciary work separate from this order, but this order and the implementation of it will provide us with the information, which is what we have been missing. It's great that we have the ordinance that says that people will file the reports, but to a point made earlier, if we don't know what they are or where they are, we're working blind. So this will open our eyes if we implement it ASAP, and then we can work on the rest from some different perspectives. Thank you.
Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, I would just hope that we send it to the law department to be put into legal form, but that it would come back and that we would invite the mayor and probably if it's possible, Tanya, and if there are departments that are much more grant oriented than others, if we made sure those managers were aware of this and we asked for their input on this as well, on how we can make it better. I think, the more people that are going to be involved in doing this, that have the responsibility for doing this and working with Tanya, I think they should be aware that we have serious concerns and that this is why we're here, talking about this and talking about these procedures. So I just hope that once we get it, it comes back. But when it does come back to the committee, we do invite the mayor. We do invite any department heads that have significant grants.
Councilor Lisi has a follow-up.
Yep, absolutely. Councilor Bacon.
Through you to Tanya, I just want to make sure whatever we do or don't do tonight, is she able to implement the flagging and the procedural efforts without us having to get legal form? Is she able to do that now? I would just like to know that.
Tanya?
I can do that now. I'm going to do that now, yes. I have a list of grants that I'm working with now.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure our procedures weren't holding up an operational.
No.
Okay.
No, I just needed authorization from the mayor and I got that today, so I feel good about that.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I could say is we are expected to take up the salary study order next on the 26th, which is our next meeting. A lot of department heads have been showing up for those discussions, so I think it would be easy enough to have the legal form in front of us and ask for input from department heads that night as well, since they'll be likely in attendance anyhow. So we could pass something that says let's get a legal form this evening, and then we can look at it again on the 26th. Or to Councilor Bacon's point about just wrapping things up and moving forward, and then asking for buy-in from the department heads could happen separately. But the motion on the table presently is that we ordain that there is a grants management procedure as outlined by the auditor's office.
I'm fine.
Real quick,
Yep. Councilor McGivern.
if I could through the chair to Tanya. Tanya, I heard you just say you needed the mayor's approval.
And she got,
You don't need the mayor's approval to be an auditor.
I know, but I was
you are independent. But I like the idea that you got the mayor's approval, just like he has to sign this or can sign this ordinance or veto it. Because if you got the mayor's approval, he's in agreement with you doing your job, which is important. But more so, I hope he's in agreement with doing his job to oversee these managers when their grants are flagged. I'll stop short there. Thank you.
Councilor Bacon, is that your hand?
I'm all set.
Okay, so again, the motion is on the table that the motion that is on the table is that we ordain a grants management procedure as outlined by the auditor's office. Or we could just draft into legal form as Councilor Murphy noted and actually pass the ordinance at the next meeting. So I don't know if we want to work on the order that's before us or the motion that's before us, or if we want to withdraw it and go the two-step route so that we can put it before the department heads.
I'm sorry, were you talking?
I thought the motion before us was
Had a
to
wasp
send
in
it to
my
legal.
hand here, so. I got it though.
It's to draft into legal form and send to the full city council so that it would be passed at the next city council meeting. Or do you want to wait and have it before the next ordinance committee meeting? That's the question here.
I mean, I would just think in terms of getting the mayor and getting the department managers who are handling the grants, just to have them come to the meeting and go over it with us. I mean, if we could follow up and still have it go to full city council, I'd be okay with that too. But I think Councilman McGivern's point, and I think the order itself asks for that kind of input, and I think we should try to get that.
So I'll amend my motion to receive the legal form back in committee at the next meeting for action.
Great. The motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Okay, so we'll take this up again at 1:26 with some really brief legal language. We'll have these documents available, and perhaps we could circulate them to the department heads in the meantime so that they can review the procedure.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Everyone will know all at the same time, and
Yep.
Tanya won't have to meet with people one at a time.
Right. So Tanya or Jeffrey, do either of you want to circulate this to department heads for their review?
Are you saying the legal form when it comes back? Is that what you're referring to?
Or the procedure.
The procedure and the documents that Tanya shared with us earlier today.
Yeah, I'd be willing to do that.
Yeah.
I would think Tanya would send those, but maybe not.
I need to make revision.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we cut you out, I think, talking over you, Tanya. Go ahead.
Ooh, I apologize for interrupting. I said I need to make some revisions. I'm going to add another piece to this, and then I'm going to send it to department heads.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Great. Okay. As long as we know who's
Thank
doing
you.
it. Great. Okay, so we're all set on item number 4, which has been made into legal form, and we'll take it up again on the 26th. Let's move back into regular order then. So is there a motion then to take up item number 1?
So moved.
Motion has been made and seconded to take up item number 1, filed by Councilor Murphy, that the Ordinance Committee consider an ordinance that would create a penalty for any driver handing out anything from the car window as a traffic safety violation. I could pass it over to Councilor Murphy, but I do think that we had a legal opinion circulated. I forget if it was Crystal that circulated it or.
I assume, yeah. I think it was Crystal.
So Councilor Murphy, do you want to speak to it briefly, and then we could have Crystal talk about the legal response that we received?
This order was filed in response. I had a meeting with the opioid task force for 3 or 4 weeks ago now, maybe a little longer than that. And one of the things that they suggested, they are constantly reaching out to people and trying to get people to take advantage of services, and that they thought one of the ways to discourage or to encourage people who are panhandling to get services would be to punish those people that are out there. And if you think about it, almost everybody that gives or reaches out and gives something, usually they're giving it to somebody who is now on the road. And so the officers that were there and the people that suggested that would really be a traffic violation. And I don't know if we are entitled to do traffic violations, but I said I would file something and see what the results are. Again, the goal is so that people are not coming on the road and getting something handed to them from someone in the car. I've also seen people in cars actually hand out things as they're not driving fast, but driving by and handing it as they're going by somebody. And the suggestion was that, you know, if you did, on occasion, you penalize people and people knew that you could get a ticket, that it would be less likely to happen. And that's really why I did it. But the ultimate goal, and I've heard it from Sean Gonzalez and the Board of Health. I've heard it from the Veteran Services, Jesus. I've heard it from this task force. We need to find a way to make our services available, more readily accepted by those people in need. And right now, what's happening, they're not accepting because they're getting enough, I guess, to be out there and continuing to do it. Now, I just talked to somebody who I think he's very honest. I think he's homeless, but he also told me, I've got jobs, but he's still out there panhandling. And I mean, again, I stop and talk to him. I haven't handed him anything because I don't want to violate an ordinance that I haven't got in. But I do try to talk to see what's going on. And again, I think we've got, and he didn't know about mass hire, which is how I found out he had a job already. That's why I filed it. I did file it at their request. I know I had a lot of people that weren't happy with me for filing it, but I thought it again brings this discussion: how do we improve the situation? And this would potentially improve some safety, but also encourage people to take advantage of our services. I'll stop there. Thank you.
So I was just looking in the jacket that Jeffrey created, and it seems that the communication is actually from the General Counsel of Massachusetts Chief of Police Association. And it seems like it's in response to an inquiry that Chief Febo made at one point in time. It says, please be advised that in the decision of Massachusetts Coalition for the Homeless et al. Versus City of Fall River et al., docket number SJC 12914, December 15th, 2020, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court struck down the panhandling statute, General Law C-85, Section 17A, as being unconstitutional on its face under the First Amendment of the United States Constitution and Article 16 of the Massachusetts Declaration of Rights. The SJC advised that the legislature may amend the statute or enact a new provision aimed at protecting public safety on or near roadways, but it must do so in a way that does not impermissibly burden protected speech. As a result, for the time being, officers should be instructed to refrain from enforcement activities related to GLC 85, Section 17A.
Madam Chair,
Councilor Greenie.
could we get a legal opinion as why and how this violates the First Amendment?
So do we want to suspend the rules and ask Crystal to speak to that, or are you asking for?
Yes. Yes, I would like, yes, I would.
I'll make a motion, we suspend the rules. And we'll allow-
Second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to suspend the rules. Crystal, can you speak to how traffic violation, like creating a penalty for traffic violation for having an arm or passing something out of the window would constitute a violation of free speech, the way that it's been outlined in the opinion that we received?
I don't know that that's the opinion. The opinion is that panhandling itself and trying to penalize panhandling is a violation of the First Amendment, but penalizing—
How and why, Kristen? How and why is that a violation of the First Amendment?
There's a very lengthy legal opinion, because we've provided it a few times now, about why trying to penalize panhandling is a violation of the First Amendment. That's what the newest opinion from the courts is saying. That's what we have said, because people standing on the side of the road and you putting signs out on, in front of your business are one and the same. There has been no push from the state as far as saying that people standing on the medians or on the side of the road holding signs is a traffic violation. You can sometimes get loitering tickets, if you're obviously standing around, but that's all coming down to enforcement. But as far as creating an ordinance that prevents panhandling, it's been shown over and over and over again in the courts that trying to create an ordinance against panhandling is a violation of the First Amendment. And I'm not going to argue with all of those lawsuits, nor am I going to put Holyoke through one of those lawsuits. It's just the precedent is so strong that we cannot create panhandling ordinances. It's not advisable.
How is it compatible with public safety?
I don't see what you're asking.
In other words, is it a violation of public safety to have this going on? So panhandlers have a right to stand out there, but the panhandlers have a right to stand out there, but it is an issue with public safety. It very definitely is an issue with public safety. Standing on the medians and traffic slowing down.
That argument hasn't survived in the courts.
Well, I guess I don't understand why, but then again, I'm just a layman that is looking for something that's reasonable.
Well, that's why we had proposed this ordinance that, stopping in the city to hand things out of your vehicle while in the street was a way to look at it. You're now penalizing the driver because that is a public safety issue. You're slamming on your brakes, and there's nothing preventing the panhandlers from standing there. What you could do is pull into the parking lot, pull over your car on the side of the road, walk over to these people. And it was shot down by the council when it was proposed because they felt that it would impede people, such as the firefighters who do, pass the boot or whatever it's called, collecting donations. And then I would also ask you, what's the difference between them and a panhandler? They're both asking for money on the side of the road. So,
what's the difference? What's the difference between a politician holding a sign or a worker from a politician holding a sign and one of their driver comes by and hands them a cup of coffee? What's the difference between that and is that illegal too?
Well, if you had an ordinance that stated that you couldn't hand things out of your window, then yes, that would be a violation because you're impeding traffic. Right. So
absolutely.
We're not saying that there's anything wrong with an ordinance providing violations to the drivers. We're saying there's a problem providing an ordinance to the people standing on the side of the road holding a sign. Because like you said, there's no difference between a politician, a panhandler, or a fireman, accepting things from people driving by.
So you're penalizing the driver.
We're looking to penalize the driver, correct.
So we're not saying a cup of coffee. A driver hands a cup of coffee out to his candidate that's standing on the corner holding a sign, and you penalize the driver.
Correct.
Yep.
Because what's the difference in them impeding traffic versus someone handing cash out? Exactly.
Nothing. I'm just trying to make a point.
Councilor Murphy, you still have No, I'm sorry, it was Counselor Greenie. So let me go to Counselor Bacon and then McGivern and then come back around to you, Counselor Murphy.
Thank you. I'm in favor of this order, and I'm looking at it as a public safety issue. I supported the other order, but I think this one is a little bit better because we're talking about handing anything from a car window. The only friendly amendment I would offer is when the car is in a travel lane, because you could be sitting in a parking lot and hand something out of your window, and that is safe. But if you're in a travel lane driving your car, the light turns green, you're not paying attention, you're handing something out of your window, then you're creating a safety hazard for the people behind you, in front of you potentially, because they don't know what you're doing. And they could hit you, whatever. So to me, if you're in a travel lane, pay attention, be driving, be traveling. If you want to hand a cup of coffee, money, food, anything, get off the road and hand it to whoever you want to hand it to. So that would be my only suggestion to make it a little bit more clear. But I think that's your intent, Councilor Murphy.
Absolutely. I would second your motion if you want to make it.
I'll make it a motion.
I'll second her amendment.
So the motion is to amend the order to identify that reaching your arm or anything out of the window from a travel lane is going to be a traffic safety violation.
Yep.
Okay, so on the amendment then, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 0 opposed, so I'm going to assume that's a 5-0 vote then for the amendment. Counselor McGivern is in queue, and then Counselor Murphy, are you still looking to speak, or?
I think I'm okay unless something else happens.
Okay. Counselor McGivern.
Thank you. Real quick, I know I understand the intent of the order, and I commend the maker of the order, and I understand the efforts, and I understand what the city solicitor is saying. But here's my two concerns, and it's one concern, but two organizations. The Labor Day weekend fire department feed the boot for muscular dystrophy. This order stops that. The Knights of Columbus Tootsie Roll drive for children with intellectual disabilities. This order stops that. And that's where I have a problem. You know, where people are upset about panhandlers and what's happening on street corners and traffic islands. You know, I understand, but are they upset about the Knights of Columbus doing a Tootsie Roll drive, about fire departments across the country doing a muscular dystrophy feed the boot drive? I mean, there's no question that this language would stop those drives in the city of Holyoke if the language were to stand up. So I can't go against what the Knights of Columbus and our fire department does in both those efforts.
Counselor Anderson Burgos.
Yeah, I completely agree with Councilor McGivern. It seems like we're not addressing the real issue, and that we're trying to find ways. And I think it's going to take more than this order to address the issue, the actual real life issue, which is panhandling. We're not unique to this issue, concerns. A lot of municipalities have the same issue with panhandling. I'm not saying I know what we have to do to address the issue, but I know there's got to be a way. I guess I agree with Councilor McGivern. This is going to create more issues than handle the current situation that we're dealing with as a municipality.
So I see Counselor Hernandez for the first time on this issue, and then I'll go back to Counselor Murphy and then Counselor Bacon.
Yes, I just wanted to to thank Counselor Murphy, because I know that, as he says, he wasn't, there was a lot of people upset when he filed this order, but I understand that we're trying as a city to collectively come to some type of solution to address this big issue that we're having in our city, which is the panhandling, the homelessness, the transient, but it's more than just the panhandling. It's almost like, there's more factors into it, such as, the drug addiction and the mental, emotional illness as well. So it's almost like there has to be like a numerous services out there to address it. And I'm afraid of, of just making it worse for the people that are already struggling out there. I know that some of them, it's like, a business, or they do it by shifts. And I've heard a lot of people say, they have like a little enterprise, but there's actually people that are out there really suffering. They don't have a stable place to live. And I think that, and people say that this city is so, we're really giving. This is a population that has, sees them on the corners, and we do share what we have, or the little bit that we have with them, and that's why they stay here. But we have to find a way that that we can address it, in a humane way. And I've always said, let's get some land and build tiny villages and put a component into it with agriculture and with trying to do like self-sufficiency and cleaning, drug-free, and, have stipulations. I know that it can be done, but, that's a topic for another time. But I won't be able to, to be in favor of it, just because I think that we have to come up with something different and address it in a different way. Thank you.
Councillor Murphy, and then Councillor Bacon.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate all your thoughts. And I mean, again, I'm not trying to do this as punitive. I'm trying to do this based on the information I got from the health community, the Behavioral Health Network, the opioid task force, that unless we find a way to lessen the financial well-being or the financial collections, so many of those people that we have services available for aren't going to take them. I mean, their argument to me makes sense in that it's not that we're trying to punish someone. In effect, we're trying to get someone to take advantage of what we do have, and that their life would be better if they would accept it. And I heard from this task force. I've heard from, I will say sometimes Veteran Services has been able to get people off the street. And I've stopped a few times and asked, and I've called Jesus or Wilfredo, and they've come down and they've actually gotten people to take advantage. But I've also seen it where they've come down and they said, "Don't bother me. I'm getting what I need right here." So I mean, that's what this is about. And as far as the charity situation, I would have to believe that if we knew we've got charitable things going on, that we could find locations where we know, whether it be a parking lot or whatever, that people would still be able to contribute. And I'm not trying to put anybody out of business. I'm not trying to make life worse for panhandlers. I'm trying to make life better for panhandlers by discouraging people. And I will also say, at some point, it's going to happen, because the panhandler goes to get money from somebody, and the car behind them is not paying attention, and wham, and somebody's going to get hit. And then we're not going to worry about whether or not they are needing services, because they're not going to be alive. And it is a danger. I mean, I've seen it. I mean, people trying to beat the light, someone stopping to give somebody money, and next thing you know, we got problems. So I do think it's a safety issue, but I think, and I know a lot of people disagree with me, I think it's a human issue in terms of trying to say, look, we want to help you. We can give you meals. We can help you find jobs. We can get you rehab services. you know, we can try to find a home for you or temporary housing. We can do all those kind of things, but we can't do them if you won't let us. And again, the argument I keep hearing from everyone there is that they aren't going to go until they aren't successful panhandling.
Councilor Bacon? You're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you. The reason I offered the amendment was out of a hope that if we address the safety issue in the travel zones, that when it came to special events and fundraising, we would be able to create a non-traffic travel lane for these type of events. So in the instance of, say, at the intersection of the mall, with all of the recent developments that we have on the entrance way into the mall, rather than using that extremely busy intersection right there, which is dangerous enough anyway, we could use one of the areas on the way along the entrance way to the mall and not hurt those events at all, but just handle them in a different way. That's really the reason why I offered that. I did feel that based on the discussions with the last ordinance that we attempted to pass, that it was overly restrictive, because essentially if you were sitting in your car anyway, you couldn't pass anything out of the window. So that to me seemed overly broad, but this would make it more specific. And I've had people tell me they've almost hit somebody because the light turned green, they went to go and the person in front of them didn't go, and they were expecting that they would. I mean, these are real safety situations, and it might not always be a panhandler. It might be somebody doing something else. But through the chair to Councilor McGivern, I heard you, and I understand those annual events that go on. And I really think we could come up with a creative way of passing this and also saving them. But that's my perspective. Thank you. And I just want to add one more point relative to the folks that are doing the panhandling. We've had at least on 2, if not more occasions, folks come in from the police department and their partners in outreach to the folks that are out there doing the panhandling. And they have reported to us repeatedly that over 80% of the people that are panhandling refuse the offer of any services that they can bring to bear for them. So from a clinical point of view, my perspective on this is that this activity, along with creating a safety hazard for people driving, is enabling people who are drug addicted. And I don't think it's helping them improve their life in any way at all. Unfortunately, from what I've seen, one of the most successful programs has been the sheriff's program. And why is that? Because the people get off the drugs when they're confined. And that is the place and time at which they are able to get released from being hooked on these extremely strong drugs. And I know this from personal experience as well as reports, that is often the way that it happens. So to be giving people money to shoot dope into their arm is not helping them. Thank you.
So I'll just add a few points to the conversation here. I like the amendment for the travel lane. When I look up the definition of a travel lane, it's where there's actually moving traffic. So just because you are in the road at a light doesn't necessarily make you in a travel lane. It really means where the light has turned green and you would be expected to be traveling. So I like that amendment. I do also want to note that just to sort of like wrap things up here, part of the reason why people have, free speech in terms of like panhandling is because people, have the freedom to do what they want with their own body. So people are going to choose to, do drugs or panhandle, like, first of all, we shouldn't be assuming that anyone panhandling is necessarily doing drugs. People panhandle for different reasons. And, but whatever they want to do, like, they should have the autonomy to do it. Now, I understand in a travel lane where we expect traffic to be moving, that there is a potential for, accidents and travel sort of traffic violations to recur in that sense. So I'm feeling open to this ordinance at the moment, but I do, just for the record, want to state, I don't think we should be conflating, drug users with panhandlers and or homeless people. They are three different populations. They may overlap at times, and some people may be all three, but they're really different populations. And in all three of those situations, it's a symptom. Like, right, so preventing people from not getting money to do whatever they want with, and they have the right to do whatever they want with their own bodies and their own money. So preventing people from getting money is just treating the symptom of the problems for all three of those issues: panhandling, drug addiction, and homelessness. So, we're not going to we're not doing anything with this ordinance to actually address the underlying issues that are creating panhandlers, that are creating, drug addiction, that are creating homelessness. So, again, I'm feeling amenable to the ordinance the way it's been amended. I think that it's very specific, but at the end of the day, I don't think we're doing anything to address the issues that I think that the order intends to address, unless it's the like literal traffic violation and potential for accidents. And in that case, I can support it. Mm-hmm. So is there a motion then? Oh, Councilor Bacon, is that your hand up again? I'm sorry.
I'm not sure, but I would like to make a motion that we adopt the ordinance as amended.
A second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adopt the amendment adopt the order as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I'm going to assume again that that's a 5-0 vote in favor of the ordinance. Okay, so then on to item number 2. Item number 2 is an ordinance related to parking downtown. I believe I filed this a long time ago. So item number 2, is there a motion to take this up?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Holyoke that parking at the end of the day, but what it says, parking downtown shall be, where is it? So it's just deleting this section that says all night parking. So no person shall allow, permit, or suffer any vehicles registered in his name other than the one acting in emergency to be parked on any street in the downtown area between the hours of 2 a.m. and 7 a.m. of any day. So the ordinance, the way that it's written in the books already, is essentially prohibiting downtown parking between 2 and 7 a.m., which just doesn't make sense. And so it was a flaw that we found somewhere along the way previously, and I forget the backstory there, but essentially it just needs to be deleted. I'll turn it over to Crystal to see if Crystal has anything to add.
I think you just wanted to erase that ordinance, so that's all that's done here, correct? I thought that was the intent, so that's all we did. We just removed the language.
And was this already taken care of? Is that what you're telling me, that we did delete it already, or?
No, I mean, I pulled it out of our code of ordinances, the language directly. So I don't think it was taken care of. I think it was still sitting in chapter 86. Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any questions about this? Sure. Counselor, Crystal, did you want to add something before I call in counselors?
No, I'm all set. It was easy enough.
Okay. So Counselor Murphy, Counselor Bacon, and then Counselor McGivern.
Yeah, I'm just going, and I could be wrong, but I somewhat think this was designed to try to keep downtown clean. And in a time when downtown was much more thriving, and there were fewer cars. So, you know, I do think the idea of the street sweeping, and when that is done, it may be that rather than repeal the whole thing, we might want to have it where we can still get one side. I don't know, but that's what I recall, that when they were having these no parking, it was to try to make sure that, and I'm assuming we're talking primarily High Street, Maple Street, probably from Cabot to Hamden, and Councilman McGivern can probably tell me if I'm wrong there. So, but I think that was the purpose. So I'm all for removing as much of this as possible, because obviously people living there have to have a place to park. But if we could make sure that we don't remove it and then create a worse situation, because we do have a situation downtown right now where we are not looking very clean, and we need to find a way to do that better. So, but I have no problem repealing this. I would suggest that we do verify if there is cleaning that takes place between 2 and 7, that we try to figure out some way to make sure that happens.
I do think, from what I understand, that when they're doing street sweeping downtown, that they do put up signage that say "Do not park here between these hours," and take it from there. So I do think that they are alerting and then coming in so that they're getting the cars parked there out of the way. And I don't think it's at 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. I think it's usually during sometime during like what we would call normal business hours. That's how I understand street sweeping to be taking place.
Yeah, and that is what they've been doing, but for the parts of the city that they're announcing it. But I think, again, I could be wrong, but I think we should check with DPW in terms of when Suez is doing this, or if they are doing it.
Thank you. Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. So my question about it was, or my concern was, I totally understand how it's outdated and people are non-compliant because they're parking on the street in front of their residence. So I totally get it from that perspective. What I'm a little concerned about is that we would then allow all-night parking in front of City Hall, in front of the parks, where it's not a residential area. And I'm concerned about the unintended consequences of repealing it in entirety. I would be very supportive of repealing it in the residential areas. But I'm really concerned, you know how we had the concerns about if a Walmart came in, what would end up being parked in the Walmart parking lot? Whenever we open up non-residential areas just to parking, I have concerns about what that might develop into. Thank you.
Sure, and since you mentioned it, I do feel like if you're jogging my memory, I think we discovered this section of the ordinance when we created the parking lot for the library, and we created an ordinance that said no overnight parking in the library's parking lot. And that's where we discovered this ordinance that seemed to be outdated to some extent. But Joe McGivern had his hand up, and maybe Joe will shed some more light on the situation for us.
Well, part of it is street cleaning, and street cleaning is not just the sweeper that Suez runs. The DPW, the downtown district is kind of the metered areas, which is a business district, you know, come morning. A business district in some areas that goes to almost midnight, you know, where they have restaurants and entertainment establishments. And but it's also about snow removal. The meter district, you know, I think we're all hopeful that our small business owners have fruitful, you know, businesses that begin about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning. Some of them only run to 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening. But the parking areas, you know, which are 2-hour parking spots, need to be cleaned and need to have snow removal immediately so that when people come downtown the next day, they have a place to park. Now, the snow removal ordinance, you know, if you allow overnight parking in this area, will prevent the DPW from keeping these areas ready and clean of both snow and debris come the next morning. And I understand we have to do something for the people who live downtown. We created in the parking ordinance itself the very inexpensive ability to park overnight in the parking decks. And that is still part of our ordinance for overnight parking, that we allow people to use the parking decks themselves. Overnight parking, you know, is fine, except, you know, I don't think people want to get up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning and move their cars when the parking meter district kicks in. I mean, there's a lot more to this than just being some archaic language. There's reasons for it. You know, the snow removal is both sides of the street in this area, whereas in other areas, the snow removal just several blocks away is one side of the street, because we move everybody over to one side of the street, and then we reverse parking, you know, to take care of, you know, Ward 4, perfect example of, you know, how many rental properties are there and how you remove snow on one side. Everybody knows they get to the other side of the street, even though it sounds like it's against the parking ban, because the next night or a night later, the DPW comes back and removes snow on the side of the street that they were parked. So there's more to it, and I think before you want to change the ordinance, you might want to bring the DPW leaders in to discuss, you know, how they do business. And like I said, there's a 5 days a week. There's not a street sweeper, but the vac goes out and picks up debris and stuff in this area.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to, you know, invite the DPW in, although I will say that it was on our draft agenda, which we put before Bob, and he felt in many ways that it wasn't a DPW issue, and they had nothing to comment on this order when we presented them the draft order with all the traffic issues. Additionally,
it's a business district issue. It's the store owners that, you know, want this.
Right, and then the other thing that I was going to say was, you know, is this actually being enforced at the moment? Like, you know, we could say we have this ordinance is going to keep the, you know, the street in front of City Hall or the street in front of the parks, you know, free of cars parking overnight. But, you know, do we think that this is presently being enforced? I mean, I guess those are the two questions. I'll ask DPW and the police department for comments on it, and we'll take it up at the next meeting. It seems relatively straightforward, so let's just get some feedback. I think written comment would be fine, and we could take it from there.
I would have questions for them, not just written comment.
I'd like to make a motion that we table and invite DPW in to comment.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
Motion has been made and seconded to table and invite DPW in. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Okay, and then we're up to the last item on our agenda, which is item number 3. Is there a motion to take it up?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. This is filed by Councilor Bacon that a permanent speed feedback sign be placed near 300 Westfield Road to reduce speeding by drivers in the area. This is a persistent safety issue in the area. Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. I know Councilor McGivern is very familiar with this area too, because it's got a downward slope and it's a tough area with a lot of driveway cuts at the plaza in that area as well. I know it'll be a financial issue to then be further considered by DPW, but if the committee does agree on the safety concerns there, then I would appreciate support in moving it forward. Thank you.
Any other comments from committee members?
Good. Is that, can I ask Councilor Bacon? So I'm just trying to make sure I understand the permanent speed sign. What does that mean now?
So for example, on Homestead Ave and in a couple other areas of the city, on a pole on the side of the road is a mechanism that gives you feedback as to how fast you're
Oh, okay.
traveling as you pass it.
Okay.
It's a relatively small mechanism. I'm not sure how much they cost.
Okay.
But I think lots of times people just aren't thinking about it. They're in a downward slope, but they're on a curve. And it's an area where people have gone into people's lawns because of the curve and because I think they tend to go a little too fast.
Yeah, I'm all in favor, and I'm gonna, and I filed an order for the next meeting. We need to take care of things. I know there's issues that I have from you in public safety, from Juan in public safety, from Dave in public safety, and we know we've done pretty well with stabilization interest, and we can still have stabilization growing and just use some of the interest and still have stabilization grow to year to year and take care of what again, West Franklin Street obviously is a concern. West Glen was an issue with safety. I mean, there's a lot of things that we keep putting off because we don't have the money. So, I mean, and I know every time I see Mike McManus and he says, where are you going to get the money? I mean, there's money there. We need to spend it to make people safer and the quality of life better. I endorse your motion.
Madam Chair.
Councilor Greenie.
Just quickly, the department heads need to put these issues into their budgets. That's what they need to do. They need to put these money issues into their budgets. And the needs of the council, the needs of the people, the residents out there for public safety are dramatic. And so the people who are in charge, once again, I throw this back on the managers. They're the ones who need to put these issues into their budgets and move them forward so that we can deal with them that way. Thank you.
Linda, is that your hand up again?
Well, just as a follow-up, I've tried to address different ways for the safety issues in that area, but it seems the way that they do the lines, I don't know if that's just a standard way. I've tried to get the lines changed, so this is just my latest attempt. I'm not sure it's the most effective one, but so.
It's worth a shot.
And again, this has been on the draft agenda and there was no particular feedback from DPW. So, I'm happy to move it forward. I understand the part of the road that you're talking about and the need for some sort of traffic control. And I understand also the difficulties probably with putting a stop sign or a speed bump or anything else that we would think of for traffic calming. It's been explored. So I think this is the sort of like our last hope. Is there a motion then?
I'd make a motion to adopt and refer to DPW.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adopt and send to DPW. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Okay, 5-0 on this as well. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda. I will move both.
Motion to end.
What is it?
I'm sorry.
To adjourn.
Yeah, but I
Okay,
thought you wanted to say something.
I was just going to say I'll be moving the grants order and also the downtown parking order onto our next agenda and hopefully being able to address them then.
Okay, so now I'd like to make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any opposed? So moved.